Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus. Resilient. Highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Jared Moon here, and welcome to the Better Humanology Podcast. So today, this week, we have Dr. Amy Bender. Now, she is the adjunct kinesiology professor at the University of Calgary, and she is a scientist on a mission to promote sleep for well-being and performance. And I absolutely loved this interview. I mean, we've talked about sleep to more than a few people now. You know, some people are legit experts like Dr. Bender, other people just health, fitness professionals who think that it's really important. But what we're bringing today is the research, and we talk about a lot of different things. We talk about athletes and performance, and why you should be more cognizant of your sleep if you want more performance. We talk about caffeine and its relation to sleep performance and why she's only drinking decaf now. And we go over the athlete sleep screening questionnaire, which she invented, which I think is really fascinating. We're even going to try and implement that into some of our own training, based off of her research and things that she's done. We talk about alcohol. We talk about gratitude and getting better sleep quality. We talk about wearables, which one you should be thinking about. And there's only one that she mentioned. I found that really interesting. We talk about having a to-do list in your bedtime routine, like writing all your to-dos down before you go to bed, and why that can help you with better sleep quality, an overall good bedtime routine, everything from 4-7-8 breathing. We just cover so many things, even book recommendations right here at the beginning and challenges. Just a phenomenal interview. I had so much fun talking to Dr. Bender, so much great information. If you are not prioritizing your sleep by the end of this podcast, something's wrong with you. So without any further ado, here is Dr. Amy Bender. Enjoy. All right, Dr. Bender, welcome to the Better Humanology Podcast. I'm very glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jared. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while. I have a lot of stuff I want to ask you, but before we can get into any of that, let's start with some challenges. So right off the bat, how about a fitness challenge?
All right. So I kind of consulted with this from my cousin, who's been a certified personal trainer and group fitness instructor for over 20 years. So she kind of gave me a good workout that she actually tested this morning. So she said it was a good one. So here we go. So buy-in. So just one time before the workout. 20 burpees and 19 push-ups. And then we have a 20-minute AMRAP, as many rounds as possible in 20 minutes. And so she mentioned 19 kettlebell swings, 19 kettlebell sumos, 19 box jumps, and 19 hand release push-ups. Do that as many rounds for 20 minutes. And then the buyout was one time, 20 burpees, 19 butterfly sit-ups, and 19 sit-ups. And she said, make sure, touch the inside of the feet at the arches. So there you go.
That's perfect. That's a perfect 2019 workout right there. I love it. I love the structure.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Awesome. So how about a mental toughness challenge?
Well, I was thinking about this. For me, I know all of us are kind of addicted to our phone. So my mental toughness challenge was, can you forget your phone one day a week? So can you go without that phone for one day while you're heading to work? So all of us forget our phone by accident, and we realize how much more productive we are. So I guess my challenge out there for you is let's try and forget that phone once a week on your way to work, and let's see how you do.
Yeah, and you also notice when you don't have your phone how addicted you are to it. When you're like, where's my phone? Wait. What?
I know.
So
absolutely.
I think that's a great challenge, and definitely could be a real eye opener for people, and a mental toughness challenge. I love that. All right, and lastly, not really a challenge, but a recommendation. Do you have a book recommendation for all of us?
Well, I have three kids, 6 and under, so reading is kind of hard to come by.
Right?
But I've been reading Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I think this is a good book for those really just trying who need to prioritize their sleep. It's really eye-opening, the effects of what sleep deprivation can do to your body. I wouldn't recommend it for those who are more anxious about their sleep. I think for those who are maybe struggling with insomnia or more anxious, I would definitely recommend Sink into Sleep by Judith Davidson.
And what would you say, why would you not recommend that book for someone who's maybe having more issues or more anxious about their sleep?
Well, he dives deep into the impact of sleep deprivation on our health, on our, longevity. And so I think someone who's really struggling with their sleep or anxious about getting enough sleep, if they read that book, Why We Sleep, I think it might just exacerbate the problem and make them even more anxious. Like, oh no, this is going to happen to me if I'm not getting good quality sleep. So for those kind of more anxious side, that's why I would recommend more of the Sink into Sleep, which will help you with the anxiety about sleep.
All right. I completely understand. I see that happen with nutrition a lot too. People get, there's some people like they get too freaked out about their nutrition. They almost shouldn't read or research certain things because it's going to take them into a bad place. So I completely get that and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, we see this with athletes too. I mean, we have to really individualize the information that we're giving based on the athlete. So if they're more of that anxious athlete, we want to give them advice that'll help them get more, but we don't want to freak them out and think it's going to impact their performance if they do get a poor night's sleep before a competition.
Got it. All right, Dr. Bender, could you give us a little bit of background? How you got into sleep and maybe just a little bit of your history academically, professionally. I know you're also an athlete, so just, take us as far back as you'd like and bring us up to today.
Sure. I grew up in a big family, so I had 4 brothers. I was the 4th out of 5. So sports ended up being a huge part of my life early on. My older brothers would make me play goalie, and they would give me $1 if I would rebound for them so they could get their shots in for basketball. Just played tackle football, any sport you can imagine outside. I ended up playing multiple sports in high school and kind of settled on basketball. So I played basketball in college. I ended up being in the Community Colleges of Spokane Hall of Fame. Transferred to a Division II school at Cal State San Bernardino, ended up getting my degree in psychology. And I was working at a job. It wasn't as mentally stimulating as I would have liked. So I was talking to my aunt about this. And at the time, she's a sleep technologist. So she said, come on out to my sleep lab. I'll show you what I do. Went out there and just fell in love with it. It was so fascinating to me. She hooked up the patient with a bunch of electrodes, and we're looking at the physiology of the signals and the brain waves and all of that. So I ended up coming back from that trip, called all the sleep labs in Spokane where I was living at the time, and just started volunteering as much as I can to try and get my foot in the door. And as it turned out, I ended up getting a job at the Sleep and Performance Research Center at Washington State University. They were looking for a sleep technician. And it ended up being working with 2 world famous sleep researchers, was a sleep technologist for a few years, and then really wanted to push the limits. And so I went to graduate school, got my master's and PhD in experimental psychology, focusing on sleep EEG. And during that time, we would sleep deprive subjects for 62 hours. So
wow.
2 full nights without sleep. And just look at the effects on cognition, decision making. And it was so fascinating to me. I really wanted to connect sleep with athletes. And so I ended up coming out to University of Calgary, got a fellowship there, and did a postdoc at Center for Sleep and Human Performance and the University of Calgary, working with Canadian Olympic athletes and helping them optimize their sleep. And in the process, developed a sleep screening questionnaire, the athlete sleep screening questionnaire, which is freely available online for people to check out. It's not designed to diagnose people with sleep or diagnose athletes with sleep disorders, but more kind of give us a red flag when you need to seek further help. So that's a resource maybe we can put in the show notes that your athletes can check out.
Yeah, for sure. Where would we find that at?
If you just, the paper was published last year. I was the first author. So if you Google athlete sleep screening questionnaire and then look for the Bender 2018, you'll be able to pull up that manuscript. And then in the additional files is where the questionnaire and the scoring system lie.
Okay.
So now currently I wanted to kind of broaden my outreach a little bit. So currently I'm senior research scientist at Calgary Counseling Center, working with people and improving their mental health with eventually sleep interventions. So we want to do some studies looking at sleep interventions in those suffering from mental health issues and see how that can transform the outcomes.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. Now, I do want to hit on a few things. We talked a little bit beforehand. I wanted to make sure that, when I have an expert on the show, I don't want to miss anything, or especially miss anything that they are currently passionate about or just overall passionate about. And one thing you mentioned was caffeine. Where has that slipped into your research or work lately?
Well, as we stand, I am at a coffee shop right now, drinking a decaf cinnamon maple latte. So it's delicious. I got my decaf coffee going on. And I'm just really passionate about getting the message out on caffeine. I mean, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Something like 90% of us across the world drink a caffeinated beverage every day. And for me, I just want to get the word out that, caffeine can impact our recovery, and it does impact our sleep. And so one of the studies I refer to a lot was one by Landolt. And what they did is they brought in subjects who were normally consuming, 2 cups of coffee a day. They brought them in for 2 days without caffeine, and then they gave them a 200 milligram of caffeine, which is the equivalent of about 2 cups of coffee at 7 a.m. And they looked at their caffeine content and they looked at how that impacted their sleep that night. And what they found was that right before bed, with a 7 a.m. administration of 200 milligrams, they had the equivalent of a black tea still left in their system. And I mean, none of us would really drink a black tea right before bed. That would be crazy. But they had that, and it ended up impacting their sleep. They took longer to fall asleep. It impacted their deep sleep or their brainwave activity and led to more arousals during the night. So I think people just need to be careful. I think more of maybe a periodized approach. So maybe going having a few days with caffeine and then maybe go 1 day without. And another study actually recently published showed that with sleep restriction, the caffeine did work for 2-3 days, but by the end of that 3rd day, it was no longer useful. So I think more of that periodized approach is going to be more beneficial for people, and that will lead to better recovery and better sleep at night.
So what you're saying there is if you are kind of sleep deprived going into 1 or 2 days, caffeine can perk you up and help you to some degree, but after the 72 hours or whatever, it's really not beneficial anymore.
Absolutely, yeah. And it showed impairments with mood, that one study. So on that 3rd day, the caffeine didn't really impact their decision making, their reaction time, and it actually impaired their mood. So trying to limit the caffeine. Can you go decaf here and there? I mean, for me, I'm full decaf. I don't drink caffeine. I might drink green tea or something if I'm really struggling in the afternoon. But for me, and I feel like I'm sleeping like I'm, 10 years old again. Like I don't wake up during the night, and with, you know, with graduate school, that's when I really started to ramp up the consumption and was drinking it day in and day out. Every single day I couldn't go without, you know, coffee for even one day. And so I think we just need to be aware of the impact that caffeine can have on us and really try and limit it.
Yeah, my caffeine consumption has spiked with each child. You know, each child I'm consuming, because I don't normally ever have more than 1 cup of coffee in a day, and then with a newborn, it could be 2 cups. Normally not 3 unless it was like a really bad night, and then now like I have a 9-month-old, so I'm weaning back down off the caffeine. But I completely agree. I know some people can drink just so many cups of coffee in a day. After a certain point, I can't see it being effective anymore.
I know, and I will mention, so my youngest he's 16 months now. I did not start this whole decaf routine until he was probably, 8 months old. So,
right.
So I definitely, the caffeine was sure a benefit when he was newborn.
Now, tell me a little bit more about the athlete sleep screening questionnaire. Sure,
yeah. So we validated it with 199 Canadian national team athletes. And there wasn't really a questionnaire out there that had been validated in athletes, a sleep screening questionnaire. And so we had the athletes fill out the questionnaire. We tested their sleep, so we were looking at objectively what's going on with their sleep, and had them retest the questionnaire multiple times. And so after that interview with the sleep specialist, we gave them recommendations to improve their sleep. So we wanted to focus on the quantity of their sleep. Are they getting enough sleep? Is it between the 7 to 9 or 8 to 10 that we would recommend for an athlete? Are they getting good quality sleep? So are they taking less than 30 minutes to fall asleep at night? Are they not waking up too often during the night? And then their timing of sleep as well. So we wanted to make sure that their timing of their sleep was in line with their chronotype, or their preference to be an evening type or a morning type. And we gave them those recommendations, and then we tested their sleep a few months later. We had them fill out the questionnaire a few months later, and found that with those recommendations that there was an improvement in sleep. And it really helped the athletes to get that education on why sleep was important, but then have practical tools for them to actually implement into their routine.
So since we can access this online, is that about the frequency you'd say if we were to take the questionnaire, say today? Would you recommend we try and make changes over the course of 30 days and then again hit the questionnaire again every 30 days to see how it's going?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably spread it out a little bit longer, because it does take some time to kind of get into a routine and get, prioritize sleep and those kind of things. So I would say for us, we would typically use it every 6 months or so.
Okay.
But if you really, I don't see a problem with maybe using it every 3 months, taking the test now, working on ways to improve your sleep. If you're really struggling with your sleep, potentially seeing a sleep specialist would be recommended. So if you're I didn't mention the way the questionnaire works is you fill it out. It takes you 5 minutes of your time. It's a 16-item questionnaire. And then it categorizes people into having no clinical sleep problem, mild, moderate, and severe. So if you do land in that moderate to severe categories, it's really important for you to seek help from a sleep professional in order to, don't just try and do it on your own, really get help to get you sleeping better.
Yeah, that makes sense. Not everything is DIY, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I guess another question about that would be athletes in general. How would you feel, or how do you feel, having seen all that data, how do you feel athletes prioritize sleep without some sort of education behind it?
Yeah, I mean, in our study, we found that about 25% were in that moderate to severe category. So 25% of these Canadian national team athletes were needing further intervention from a sleep specialist. Around 75% were more needed that education, and really, I think linking it to performance is an important thing with an athlete. Is how can me getting better sleep, how will that impact my performance? And the studies have shown, I mean, with sleep extension, so those who get more sleep, for weeks on end, and maybe leading into a competition, perform better. So they have faster reaction times, they have faster sprint times. There was a study in collegiate basketball players where they found that they had better shooting percentage. In football players, they found they shaved 0.1 seconds off their 40-yard dash time. So we are really seeing improvements in performance with better sleep. So I think linking it to performance is really important, and then giving them tools to get better sleep. So potentially having a bedtime routine and what should be included in that, or incorporating a daily nap is really important for athletes. So there's different tools and tricks that we can give them in order to get better sleep, get better quantity, quality, and timing of sleep, and then hopefully lead to better performance.
And now you're mentioning like a lot of metrics between, how quickly you follow sleep latency, and, we could get into sleep cycles and everything else. But before we do that, I would like to know, you can't know any of that stuff without some sort of reading, right? Or some sort of tech, whether you're going into a professional and having a sleep study done, or some sort of a wearable or something like that. What do you recommend for people who want to analyze their sleep? I mean, there's so many options. Are they reliable? Should we trust our phones or some sort of device? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of the wearables at this point. I mean, I think there's some work to be done in that area, and I think they're improving, but they can really do damage too. I mean, there was one study that found that it was a Fitbit at the time, and I know Fitbit has improved their version since this time, but they found that it overestimated sleep by an hour.
Wow.
And that's huge. I mean, if I'm going to sleep and I'm waking up and it's telling me I'm getting 7 hours when I'm really getting 6, that's not a good thing. And I think it can overinflate the amount of sleep that we're actually getting, but it can also overestimate as well. So I think we're getting there. The one that I'm really intrigued about, and I think was validated with polysomnography, which is the gold standard, what I was doing when I visited my aunt's sleep lab, is the Oura Ring seems to be kind of promising and has been validated with polysomnography. But we do have to be careful as to how we're going to interpret that information. So if the wearable is giving us false information, and let's say it's potentially underestimating our sleep, that could potentially affect my performance. So for example, if it's saying I got 6 hours of sleep when I really got 7, I'm going to think, oh man, I only got 6 hours. It's saying that my quality is really poor. Oh man, I'm going to be sluggish today. It's going to impact my performance. So I think we have to take it with a grain of salt. And for me, I don't use a wearable whatsoever. I just kind of gauge, I kind of have a set bedtime that I try and aim for, and then try and wake up naturally, which is kind of hard to do with kids. Right. But if I'm not, let's say I go to bed late, which happens, I mean, life happens. I can't get, 7 hours of sleep every single night. Then I try and make up for that across the week. So I'll try and take a nap potentially maybe that day, or maybe sleep in the next day, or try and go to bed early. So I think using the information wisely, but I think even just kind of having a set bedtime and a wake time and adjusting your sleep pattern across the week if you don't meet those standards can be really useful.
Yeah, I do think that, that subjective data when you just wake up is such a good, like taking inventory. Like that really to me is the best, because I've done, I have wearables and I've tried all this different stuff, but some days it could be like, oh yeah, you're perfect, ready to go. I'm like, I don't feel like that. And then I've had other times where it's like, no, that was a horrible night. And I'm like, well, I feel great, and so it can really, like you said, that subjective data I think is really important. And I've even played different wearables against each other, and I've wore 2 different ones one night to just test. Cause like, I don't know, the where I should be looking for, you kind of like you said, gold standard of sleep. And one of them was like, well, you got 2 hours and 45 minutes of deep sleep, and the other one said I got like 13 minutes of deep sleep, and I'm like, well, I don't know. That's like a huge discrepancy. So yeah, it is hard to trust. I'm glad that you said the Oura Ring is something that we should be looking into, because I have the founder of the Oura Ring. He's coming on the podcast here in a few weeks, so that'll be interesting to get his take on that. So yeah,
awesome.
That's great, great information to know, and for all of us out there to kind of be aware. I do think that subjective measure is so important.
Yeah, I mean, you even look at, there was a study with on-call. So they brought participants into the lab. They told them, all right, you're going to be on call tonight, so you can go to sleep normally, and this phone will wake you up if you get a call or whatever. And they didn't actually wake the participants up with the phone, but just telling them that they're on call influenced the quality of their sleep. So I think mindset is really powerful when it comes to sleep and sleep quality and your performance throughout the day.
I couldn't agree more. I just recently had to travel, and I had to wake up super early. I had to be up at like 3 a.m. to be able to make it to the airport on time. And because I set my alarm for that, I went to bed as early as I could to try and get as much sleep as possible, because I do prioritize sleep very heavily in my weekly routine. But I didn't sleep well. I kept waking up like every other hour because I was afraid I was going to miss that alarm. It's just in the back of your mind that like, I was like, that's pretty early. Like, I don't know if I'll actually wake up for it. And you're talking about this mental side of affecting our sleep. And I wanted to actually talk to you about that today, because I saw you throw through a few things out on your Twitter feed. I just want to get your take on them now. 2 specific things were, and if you want to talk about them a little bit, you can, or if you just want to mention them, was one, a bedtime routine of having a to-do list, throwing that in there, and then also gratitude. I'd love to hear your thoughts on those 2 things.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, a bedtime routine helps us prepare our mind and our body for sleep. So it's really important. You can't just flip a switch and then expect to just fall asleep right then and there. So we have to create a bedtime routine, and we emphasize this a lot in our athletes that we're working with. So having a curfew for your electronic devices. So hopefully an hour before bed, you can set a bedtime alarm, actually. Set an alarm on your phone that gives you a cue, okay, I need to start my routine. So that's the first step, set that bedtime alarm. And then start putting those electronic devices away. Start dimming the lights about an hour before bed. Start to really prepare your mind and your body for sleep. Potentially taking a warm bath or a shower is good, because it increases our body temperature, but then our temperature decreases, which is good for sleep, right when you're wanting to go to sleep. So 30 minutes before bed, maybe take a warm bath or a shower is good to include in that bedtime routine. Preparing for the next day. So we want to be able to try and sleep in as much as we can. So are there things that you do in the morning that you could then do at night to give you more of that opportunity to sleep in? So preparing your lunch, preparing your clothes for the next day, those are all good things. And then gratitude as well. I mentioned that, I did a post on that on my Twitter, that they found that those who were writing down things that they were grateful for had a better quality of sleep during the night. So potentially incorporating a gratitude journal into your bedtime routine is really important. And then the to-do list. So what the to-do list does is it helps offload thoughts off of your mind so that you can, calmly, you're not laying there in bed and thinking of all the things you need to do the next day. And so they found that in that study, people fell asleep a lot quicker if they did a bed or a to-do list right before they fall asleep. And then there's other relaxation and breathing techniques that I would recommend. So potentially doing 4-7-8 breathing to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So what that is you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 7, and then breathe out for 8. And what's important here is that you're breathing out longer than you're breathing in, and that helps activate our parasympathetic nervous system, our relaxation system. Those would be some of the, maybe throw in some stretching, some yoga, maybe some light yoga, light stretching can also be useful to throw in there, and really individualize it to what relaxes you.
That's incredible. Very beneficial. Thank you so much for all those tips and putting that all together. I think anyone listening to this could have a really solid bedtime routine. So I really appreciate that. Now, what about alcohol? What are your thoughts on alcohol and sleep?
Well, alcohol, a lot of people think alcohol helps them sleep better just because it's more of that sedative. It helps relax you. It helps you fall asleep quicker. But as it's being metabolized during the middle of the night, it's waking you up more. It's reducing your REM sleep, which is your dreaming sleep that helps you process information. So alcohol, you really want to limit to maybe 1 drink at dinner time and then kind of cut it off at that point. Males or bigger body types may be able to get away with 2, but I think if you see that connection with you drinking alcohol and then waking up during the middle of the night, you really want to cut back on that and really just every so often, maybe a special occasion, have some alcohol. But think about in those times where, it really could impact your sleep. If you're using it day in and day out, it's going to impact your recovery. So really just try and limit it.
So I'm obviously not referencing any studies here, but I feel like a lot of people probably fire up their day with a couple of cups of coffee and then end it with a couple of alcoholic drinks. So based off of our conversation so far, that is not how we should be hitting the day-to-day.
Absolutely. Yes, I completely agree. If you want the best quality sleep that you can, you really want to try and limit alcohol and caffeine.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And where do you think, how do you think we got sleep? This is more of an opinionated question. How do you think we got sleep so screwed up? It's such a natural thing that humans do and should be doing. Like, what went wrong? Like, why don't people get enough sleep? And why do you think people don't prioritize it very much?
Well, I think it's the first thing to go. We're all struggling with the amount of time that we have during the day. And I think it's almost the first thing to go. So I can get more things done if I don't sleep as much. And so sleep kind of goes on the back burner when we get busy and, I'll just do this and do that, and I maybe won't sleep as much. But in order for us to be the most productive that we can, we really want to aim for between 7 and 9 hours of sleep each and every day, and really try and think about sleep across the week. So as I mentioned, if you do have a late night where you're busy preparing for a meeting, can you bank sleep actually leading into that sleep deprivation period too? I haven't mentioned this yet, but banking sleep is a huge strategy that we use in our athletes, especially for those preparing for an important competition. So can you get more sleep a week before or 2 weeks before that important competition, so that if I get a bad night's sleep the night before, it's not going to impact my performance? And the studies have shown that you perform better if you can get more sleep leading into that sleep deprivation period. So that's another important strategy that I didn't mention yet.
That's very interesting. And how, putting it in more literal sense, how long could a sleep bank last? Is it really mainly you could bank up for 1 day, or would it be 2 days? What do you think there?
Well, the studies typically show at least 1 week leading into that sleep deprivation benefits performance. And there was recently some research showing that 1 night of good sleep, or 1 night of getting extra sleep didn't really impact it. So I think you need more than just one night. We don't really know kind of the optimal, and it depends on the situation as well. What type of performance do you want to improve? So I don't think we really know the answer. I know I would at least lean towards more than just one night of getting extra sleep leading into the sleep deprivation.
Okay, so it may be a 7 for 1 type of equation there. 7 good nights of sleep for 1 sleep deprived day would be a safe bet.
That's a safe bet, yes.
Okay, awesome. And now I do want to talk about different types of people, chronotypes. The early bird and the night owl. What's the difference there? Is it really a thing? And how do we know? How do we pay attention to that?
Oh, I mean, the best way to kind of understand whether or not you're a night owl or an early bird, and it's about a 15% of us are early birds. So early bird meaning, wanting to get up before 6 a.m., wanting to go to bed before 10 p.m. And about 15% of us are night owls. So even, going to bed past midnight and waking up past, 8 a.m. would be their type of preference. So 15-15 split. And then the rest of us kind of fall between kind of intermediate types. So I guess the best way to understand whether or not you're a night owl or an early bird would be what happens when you don't have a schedule? What happens when you're on vacation? Do you tend to wake up early? Do you tend to go to bed later and sleep in later? And so it's more of those free days that help determine kind of what chronotype we are. And so even on the weekends, do you tend to go to bed later and sleep in later? Then you're more maybe of that evening type. And what we see in the research is that the evening types, and specifically we've looked at this with athletes as well, have a harder time adjusting to the training schedules, the work schedules. So evening types have it not as good, I guess you would say, just because of our society and the way things work. Things open at 9 a.m. and, you can't get to work at 10 a.m. normally. So for those evening types, as much as you can, if you can adjust your work schedule or if you can adjust your training schedule to make sure that you're training later in the day would be advisable for them. If you can't do that, if you're constrained by work, that you have to be to work at 9 a.m., getting lots of light during the morning is really important, and it will help set your circadian rhythm to that earlier time. So getting lots of light in the morning will help with that, and then blocking light at night is going to help shift your rhythm. So if I'm an evening type, what we're finding is that the evening types, a lot of it can do with your sensitivity to light. So they're finding that more of the evening types are sensitive to light at night, which is waking them up at night. I'm talking like in the evening hours. And then just kind of their melatonin is being released later because they're more sensitive to that light at night. So blocking light at night is really important for those evening types. Wearing sunglasses, potentially wearing blue blocking glasses, dimming your lights at night, putting away the electronics is going to be really important 1 to 2 hours before bedtime so that the light isn't waking you up and just exacerbating the problem.
And when you say get a lot of light in the morning, are you talking about natural sunlight if it's available?
Yes, natural sunlight is the best kind of light. Get outside in the morning, get some fresh air, maybe do a run in the morning during daylight. What they find is that light before noon, like natural light before noon, is helpful for our sleep quality. So the studies show that. And also what they find is that more light during those morning hours help us to not be so sensitive to light at night. So if I'm getting lots of light in the morning, let's say I do an hour run in the morning during daylight, when I'm using those electronics, an hour or two before bed, it's not going to impact me as much if my total light during those morning hours are higher.
So is there like a sweet spot there for just kind of average everyone, like how much light we should be hitting for before noon? Is it an hour, or ideally, if we were able to do, weren't locked in an office or something like that, how much time should we make sure we get each day?
I would say at least 30 minutes. I don't think we know the specific answer to that, but I would say a minimum of 30 minutes if you can. And then if that's not possible, so I mean, we're in the winter months where, the sun may not rise until, 7:30 or whatever. There are light boxes out there. So if you find that you're really struggling during the winter months at waking up, there are light therapy boxes for seasonal affective disorder that can be helpful. You can wear light glasses, Luminette light glasses. They have a glasses version that you can wear around and just get 20 minutes of, artificial light, but it's bright light during the morning hours. You could also get a dawn simulator alarm clock. So there's a few different versions out there where it will the light will gradually get brighter, and then at the point that you want to get up, it'll be at its brightest point. So those are some good things that if you can't really get a lot of natural light during the morning hours, but really try and aim for 30 minutes minimum outside if you can.
And if we were to able to get those 30 minutes each day, and say it's the summertime where it's a little bit easier to do something like that, would wearing sunglasses during that time frame, pure UV blocking sunglasses or whatever, would that negate the effects of what we're trying to achieve?
I think so. I mean, it would somewhat negate the effects, and I don't want all of the ophthalmologists out there hating me or on that. But yes, you do want to, as much as you can, you want to get the bright light into the eyes. And so wearing sunglasses during that time would somewhat negate the effects.
And then on the kind of flip side of that, at night, do you find that like a sleep mask is something beneficial for people who maybe can't get their rooms very dark?
Yes. So having a sleep mask, having blackout shades if you can. So they're finding that the more artificial light at night, even street lights can come in through the windows and impact your melatonin and have a higher risk for different types of cancers as well. So they find that artificial light at night, even during the sleep period with your eyes closed, can impact the quality of your sleep and can lead to higher risk of cancer rates. So having the eye mask is important, having the blackout shades, lay there at night, let your eyes adjust a little bit, maybe 10 minutes, open your eyes and kind of see where some of those bright points are. Is there light coming in through the window? Are there maybe lights from an electronic or an alarm clock or, just kind of gauge based on your own sleep environment and then really tackle the areas where you can block out as much light as possible.
Now, I don't intend for this to be a silly question, but I was recently staying with some family who live in a very rural area, and they don't have blackout blinds or anything like that. But there's also no such thing as a street light anywhere near. But the moonlight was like lit up my whole room. Like, do you think that it's just the artificial light and or should we be trying to block everything?
That's a great question. I mean, there's been a little look at moonlight and how that can impact our sleep cycles, but there's not really solid evidence either way. So I would opt to just block out the light as much as you can, even if it is moonlight.
Okay, good. Awesome. Well, Dr. Bender, it's been awesome. Awesome conversation so far, but I'm going to move to the quick fire questions of the show. Are you ready?
Sure.
What's the hardest workout you've ever done?
Well, I did an Ironman in 2009.
Nice.
So I didn't mention that earlier, but yeah, so that was, 14 hours of continuous workout there. As I was preparing for Ironman, I remember there was one time where the weather outside was horrible and I needed to do a long bike ride. It was, I was supposed to do 4.5 hour bike ride outside, and I just couldn't do it outside. The weather was terrible. So I got on my trainer and my husband started working out with me, and he lasted literally 30 minutes. And then he was, on the couch enjoying it. And I was just staring at that couch, wanting to be on there. But I made it through, and I did 4.5 hours on a trainer, which was painful. But yeah, I would say that would be the hardest workout that I can remember.
Yeah, I got to rank that up there with an extreme mental toughness challenge too. That's awesome that you did that.
Yeah, totally.
Now, in your opinion, what's the best activity for building mental toughness?
I would say probably meditation. I've been recently starting to do some meditation and find that it really helps me with, even just patience with my kids, being able to focus. And so that's kind of one of my goals for 2019 is to see if I can get up to, 15, 20 minutes a day of meditation, and really hope that it'll benefit me.
Very cool. I think that's a great way to build mental toughness, is just the ability to, in a sense, control your mind by letting go. I think that's really awesome. Mm-hmm. Now, if you could only have one piece of equipment to train with for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I'm guessing you were not going to say that bike in your living room, but on your.
Let's see. Can I say a pillow? Is that?
Yes. I love it. I love the unique answers. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think sleep is so important for people if they want to be actually even just the best person that they can be. So really trying to prioritize that sleep will help you as a person and help you as an athlete as well.
Yeah. And I think, there are all these like hacks and tricks and stuff just in the health and fitness industry. But the more people I talk to like you, and the more I just research it and implement things myself, it really seems like if you can master your sleep, and after that would be nutrition, and then your training, you're going to be far, far better off than almost anyone else. But that does bring up one question I forgot to ask, and I'll throw it in here real quick before we get to the last question of the show. Supplementation. Do you recommend any supplementation, or do you think just having a good bedtime routine is what people should strive for?
I don't really recommend specific supplements. I think the evidence is mixed out there, and so a lot of people ask about melatonin. What we find with melatonin is it's effective if you're traveling for jet lag. So it's effective as a chronobiotic to help shift your rhythms to an earlier time. Or if you're that night owl, it may be effective for you. But just taking it day in and day out to try and improve your sleep quality, we find that it's not really effective. And there is a question of the content that you're getting. So one study showed it was like a minus 50 to 300% of what the content label was showing in the majority of these supplements. So you have to really be careful. Are you getting what it really says you're getting? I think ways to try and promote melatonin naturally, so getting rid of the electronic devices before bed is good. There is some promising evidence with tart cherry juice. So they're finding that tart cherry juice can increase melatonin at night. So that may be something to look into. Magnesium is another one that a lot of people anecdotally recommend, but I think the evidence isn't quite there yet for me to, recommend for everyone to use.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't supplement much, especially for sleep. I've tried a few things, but have never seemed to notice any quantifiable difference than just trying to get good sleep through better habits. That's the best thing that's worked for me personally. All right. Mm-hmm. Now, the question of the show, what's the best advice you have for becoming a better human? And this is 100% open-ended.
Well, I would say I would say, as I mentioned before, and I am the sleep expert and I am biased here, but really trying to prioritize that sleep, really trying to prioritize between 7 and 8 hours of sleep per night is going to be your way to unlock your fullest potential. And if you get less, try to make up for it across the week. So I think sleep impacts so much of our lives, so much of our health. It impacts, being able to be patient with our children. So if we don't get good sleep, we're going to be more impatient. We may be more apt to yell. If we don't get good sleep, it may impact our decision making, and we may take riskier decisions. So really, I think if you want to unlock your fullest potential, trying to really aim for that 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night, and then try and also get good quality sleep by having that bedtime routine, by putting away those electronic devices, by getting that exercise, by getting that light early in the morning, are ways that we can become a better human.
Awesome. I love it, Dr. Bender. Well, where can people, follow you or learn more about what you're doing and all that good stuff?
I'm on Twitter, so I'm on at Sleep for Sport. I'm pretty active on Twitter, so I try and post really practical ways for people to try and get better sleep. And then I'm also on Instagram, which I'm trying to get better at posting there as well. So those are the two avenues.
Awesome. And we'll link to both of those. Well, Dr. Bender, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jared. It was great. It was fun times here.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best.